Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Lauren House. I am the hostess of the show Beyond the House. We are on the Social Nostra network, and today I have one of my very dear friends, probably of 15 years. I'm very excited to speak with him. His name is Jason Allen. He is the founder of Skyline Consultants here in Phoenix. He is a city planner by profession. He opened his business in 1999. He's got lots of credibility. He works zoning cases. He works land use cases, development, industrial, retail, office, residential, and he's represented big clients such as Starbucks and Boeing. Today, we are going to be discussing hillside homes. How do you build a hillside home? Where do you start? What are some obstacles that could come up? So thank you, Jason, for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Do you want to give us like a quick rundown of some cool things about maybe how you got started in the industry, or how, I don't know,
Sure.
just like a quick background?
Yeah, I can give some quick background. So I have an urban planning degree from ASU from a long time ago. And started my career. My very first project was working on the light rail project for a firm called BRW, and then I was hired by the city of Phoenix as a city planner, and so I worked in zoning and in the development services department. So I would kind of be the city staff planner at the zoning hearings, where city staff, where the planning commissioner or the city council or the zoning hearing officer would ask questions at the public hearing, and I would answer those questions. I worked on creating ordinances. I worked on the language of the transit-oriented development ordinance, the downtown code, you name it. So I was at the city for a while, and then was hired away by Buse Gilbert, which at the time was the largest land use and zoning law firm in the state. And so we handled all types of big projects, from the Esplanade to the Town Lake in Tempe, you name it. So, and then did that for a couple years, and then started my company in 1999, Skyline Consultants. And as you alluded to, I've handled every type of project you could imagine. Right now, most of the projects that I'm working on are high-rise projects in downtown and midtown, uptown. I've got a 30-story project at the Arizona Center, 11-story adaptive reuse project at the corner of Central and Camelback. So, yep, all over the place for sure. So thanks for having me.
You are welcome. It's so interesting because I'm sure that each case, is that what I should call it, presents its own project, presents its own obstacles. And I'm sure like this is a job that with time you are feeling more comfortable. Do you still have new hurdles that come up?
Yeah, I mean, every project presents its own and unique hurdles. I mean, there's no day is exactly the same. I mean, it's similar in that, when I have a new case or new project, just like an attorney, when sometimes you're dealing with totally different case law, you're dealing with issues that have never come up before in your career. Most of the time I've been involved or have, over time, you've seen just about everything, but the unique nature of the business is that there's so many moving parts and it can be so complex and complicated that no case is exactly the same. Then you factor in if you're dealing with a zoning case, now you're dealing with a whole different group of neighbors. You're dealing with a whole different group of issues that are unique unto the site. So,
All right, sounds like real estate. It's like just when you think you know it all, something else gets thrown at you, and you're like, okay,
no
well,
doubt.
after however many decades in the business, you're going,
Yep.
okay, I just learned something new today.
No doubt. That's what
So
keeps
with
it.
that being said, where does one start with this? We're just going to discuss a homeowner's pretty much start to finish. And I don't need every detail, but like if I purchase, and let's start with a hillside lot, instead of a home that needs to be demolished and scraped. We'll go down that road a little later. But just out of curiosity, if I'm a homeowner, I just purchased in Clearwater Hills, or maybe not an HOA, maybe we should say just Camelback Mountain. Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, typically the first thing you want to do is you want to, go to the city. Either you can go to the city, or you can hire, your land surveyor or your engineer, and have them go see if there's actually approved plans on site, for the site, either at the city, or if you're located in the county, then you would go to the county. So let's just say, for example, you're buying a home with an existing home, but you want to scrape it and you want to build a larger home. So then what you would do is those plans and those maps, they would tell you if there's an approved plan on those. It will give you a square footage of what is approved for that site. And so say, for example, you have a 35,000 square foot lot, and you've got, a 4,000 square foot home on the site, and you want to go to 6,000. But the limitations, let's just say in Phoenix, for example, which is, would be, it seems like most of the hillside lots are either in Phoenix or in PV. If you wanted to exceed that 4,000 square foot, depending on the size of the size of the lot, and depending on how much of the land has been disturbed, you may be able to increase the size of the home. But there also may be some limitations, and that you may be over, and so you're maxed out. And so what that means is the only way around that is you would have to go through a hillside waiver, which is a public hearing. It's a process, it's a public hearing process unto itself. And those are, they're pretty tough cases. What they would require is that you are able to prove to the city or the hearing body that what it is that you're planning to do is not going to tarnish or you basically have to prove that there's some type of a hardship, and that you're in a unique situation, and that whatever you are proposing and planning on doing will not have a negative impact on the adjacent property owners or people that live maybe down below, for example. If you're planning to put up some monstrosity that is not cognizant of ridge lines and outcroppings, and you're planning to put like a ranch style home on the hillside, then yeah, your chances are pretty tough. And so there's a lot of different moving parts to the process. The goal would be to not have to go through that additional process. So
if you want to build up second story, third story, let's just use your example of 4,000 square foot pad, pretty much on the 35,000 square foot lot, and you want to build up, is that considered exceeding
So you can't build above 2 stories or 30 feet in a hillside district. And a hillside lot is essentially, it's when you have your surveyor, or your engineer analyze the slope of the lot, if the overall grade or the slope of the lot is more than 10%, then it is in fact considered a hillside lot. So that means that you have to conform and comply with the hillside ordinance. And that's where you get into the limitations of the not exceeding 20,000 square feet or 35% of the lot itself, whichever is more stringent. So there's not really a way to make that less complicated sound.
Right. Well, that's why we have an expert like you who's been in the business for 21 years.
Anyway, so there's a lot of moving parts to it. It certainly is if you have your heart set on a hillside lot, I love hillside lots. I've had hillside homes before myself, and there's nothing like them. But you have to understand that you are subject to significant limitations, and you need to have the stomach to understand that it's not just a rubber stamp. It's not we're not talking about a 8,000 square foot lot at 16th Street in Thomas.
Right.
It's very different. Each and every site has its own story, has its own conditions, its own topography, its own drainage issues. You could have a lot that is 43 is an acre, 43,560, but you could have, you could be 20% of your lot could have a wash that runs right through it. And if you have a certain cubic flow per second, which means what is the volume of rain or water that comes through your lot, you may not be able to build on that. So without some significant engineering, because then what happens is, what if you go ahead and you alter the flow of that natural wash? Now all of a sudden, if you modify it and you move it around, now all of a sudden, and it's done through using culverts or various forms of concrete. Now all of a sudden, you have a less wide area in a shorter with a shorter width, but now your speed of that volume picks up significantly. And imagine if your neighbor who lives downstream, now all of a sudden that becomes his problem. So in other words, there's a lot of things that need to be considered. So the city doesn't want you just to say, okay, we're just going to go ahead and put up a culvert right here, and so now it's the next guy down the road's problem. Doesn't work. Yeah.
It's literally a domino effect. Whoever's at the top is affecting and impacting every single person below. Exactly. And not just with water. I'm sure it's with other.
Sure. Well, and there's other considerations. I mean, for example, if you wanted to do something to your site that was great for you, but you weren't being cognizant of your surrounding neighbors. Now all of a sudden you put up a 30-story or 30-foot building, and you don't pay attention to the massing. You don't pay attention to the others around you that used to have a nice view of the ridgeline of Camelback Mountain. Now all of a sudden they don't have anything. So not only is their quality of life affected, their value of their home has been affected. So people just need to be cognizant of what they're doing, and they really need to try to be understanding of each and every of their neighbor's situation as well. So it's like I said, it's not a quick and easy. I mean, sometimes it can be. Sometimes it can be. Sure, everything may fall into place, and there may be no issues whatsoever. But I think it's better to be prepared and understand that there probably will be some issues, and so that you got to make sure that you've got the stomach for it,
and the finances, and the patience,
and the finances.
There's a lot that goes into this.
Patience and finances are definitely helpful.
So I was at Paradise Valley Luxury Home Tour one morning, and I don't remember who was speaking.
Huh?
But he said that Paradise Valley is much more strict on their hillside restrictions than Phoenix is, due to pretty much the colors and how it blends in with the mountain.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Paradise Valley has a 24-foot height, so you can't build anything over 24 feet. It's in Phoenix it's 30, so you have a little bit more flexibility. The problem is that back in the day, Paradise Valley used to be very flexible with their hillside, and unfortunately, a number of people took advantage of that. And so you can see there are certain spots on Mummy Mountain that have been scarred pretty well, where they didn't. They scarred the mountain and then they didn't revegetate it, and so unfortunately, everyone else kind of pays the price because the natural state that the mountain used to have is no longer there, and so unfortunately, it just takes one bad apple, and then everyone has to pay the price down the road, so to speak. But like I said, it could be a good thing. I mean, there's a lot of things that you just don't know, but just like case law, everything is precedent sets. When you set a precedent, that certainly is part of the mix. So, but yeah, Phoenix has a little bit more flexibility on some things than Paradise Valley, but generally they're pretty similar, with the exception of a few different things. But it'd have to be a certain specific scenario or situation. So
okay.
Yeah.
So once the homeowner goes to the city to find out if there are current plans, who would have submitted those?
Yeah, so the architect would have submitted the plans, and they would have had to have them approved by the city or the county. And so those approved plans are typically on, like in the city of Phoenix, you can get them on the second floor at the records.
You have a contact name for us and our phone number and an email? I'm just kidding.
They change all the time, so
So does that mean that you have to get your own architect and you have to get your own plans drawn up, and then the architect submits it to the city, or do you go to see if this lot has anything from anybody ever in the history of its lifetime on the mountain?
Yeah. The first thing to do is you want to see what are you actually, are there approved plans, and what do those plans, what are they approved for? Like I said, if it's approved for a 4,000 square foot house, and depending on the ratio of the slope of the lot, which will tell you how much, how big of a house you can build. That's kind of the square one. If there isn't, and if the plans were not approved, and which that happens, there are plans there are homes up there that have never been approved, but they were built prior to annexation from the county. And so back in the day, there weren't really many restrictions. And so you have a legal non-conforming situation, also known as a grandfathered clause. So sometimes, what's that?
Go ahead. I have a question, but go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead.
How does that work if you purchase a home and maybe you don't want to demolish it, but let's just say you want to add on, you want to update it, you want to whatever,
Right.
just make your changes to the house, but it's grandfathered in. So is this pretty much starting from square one, or is this?
Well, it's so if you have, let's just take the scenario, if you have a home that was grandfathered in, that's legal non-conforming, or I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, I guess, but either one is legal non-conforming, which means that you legally had an approval prior to annexation or prior to ordinance change. In other words, so you were legally approved for the home that you built, right, before the laws changed. Okay. The other scenario is you have a home that is non-conforming, meaning that it was built illegally back then, and so therefore and now even subsequent to the ordinance change or the laws being changed, it's still non-compliant. In other words, you're still in violation. So you're not going to be able to expand on that at all. And if anything, they could, depending on the municipality, they could require some things of the property owner. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of moving targets, and each scenario, like I said, is always different.
I'm sure.
Unfortunately, I wish it'd be great if it was just all kind of one size fits all, but it's not the case.
No, you can't compare each and every one of these. I can guarantee, I don't know how many houses on Camelback Mountain. I guess I should know, but I don't.
Sure. Most people don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That makes me feel better.
And I've handled probably 20 cases on Camelback. So
okay. Yeah. And they've all got to, like you said, throw different obstacles.
Totally different.
And it depends on how people handle it as well.
Sure.
So with that being said, how long can this take? And I know that there's not a direct answer for this. I'm fully aware.
Yeah.
I guess, can you give us an overview of what a short,
Sure.
It would be 3 months because, and
yeah, sure. So the best case scenario is that you find a lot that you like. It has a house on it that has the right square footage, and you want to get rid of the house, but you're going to maintain the footprint of the existing home, and you're just going to structurally you're going to rebuild a different house, but it will conform and comply with that initial or the original foundation, and you're not going
sense.
Right. And so then what you would do is you would just go ahead and submit your plans, and then you would just kind of go through the plan review process. The chances of not doing a survey and let's just back up. So yeah, let's just assume that everything is perfect. You've got a foundation, it's approved. There's no grandfather issues. There's nothing like that. It's just plain and simple. First scenario, maintain the same foundation, and then you go for a building permit, which will run you probably 4 to 6 months. Obviously, you could hire someone like me, and I can usually get it through a lot faster than that. But that's the best case scenario, and it's rare that really happens. And then, the other scenario, we can go down a different scenario. Say you have a lot that doesn't actually have a home on it, and let's just say it's a 2-acre lot. And so, and what you want to do is you want to build on one of the lots, but you want to sell the other lot. So what you would do is you would split the 2 lots, right? But what if the layout is not? What if the second lot is maybe higher up on the mountain, and there's no access to that lot, and you would have to have 150,000 linear feet of frontage, and you're not able to do that. So the way you would get around that is that you would request a variance, which is a public hearing, to create a flag lot. And so the flag lot, essentially you have, it's just like a flag. You have, instead of having a 150-foot wide access point, you have maybe 35 feet. And so then so that would be used to get to the upper part of the lot.
That's not considered an easement?
No. So an easement is a term that's thrown around inaccurately pretty often, to be honest with you. In fact, probably 7 out of 10 people use it incorrectly. So an easement, essentially what it is, and that flag lot you could provide an easement. You certainly could, but an easement is essentially me allowing you to use a portion of my land for whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's access, whether it's for a shared retention basin, maybe it's an easement for parking or something like that. So yeah, that's what an easement is. But so but typically in the flag lot scenario, that is it's usually used that the pole part of the flag is typically just used for access, and it runs with the land that you carve out, which would be that second lot.
So to give somebody an example, it's like the closer lot has their driveway, and then the easement, or not the easement, the flag lot has a driveway. So they both come up, but this closer lot, their house is here, and this continues moving up, and then the house is up here.
Exactly. So so that gets in a little bit more complex scenarios, because you need to go, in order to get an approval to create a flag lot, is essentially it's a variance to allow a lot with less than required frontage. So that's kind of the legal way it's described. And so so you have to prove that there's a hardship, and you have to prove that it's unique unto this property, and cannot be replicated on other properties around in the area or neighborhood. And so you have to develop a hardship. You have to prove a hardship. That's that's the test. So that process to go before the zoning administrator takes about 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, that's not terrible.
And so you can't, in other words, you can't move to the plan submittal process until you get that approved.
Okay.
So it's a public hearing. So in other words, we'd need to notify everyone within 600 feet. All property owners within 600 feet, all the homeowners associations within a mile, to all come and speak at the hearing and tell you how much they love your project or how much they hate it. And
just putting yourself on a pedestal and waiting to have tomatoes thrown at you.
Yeah. So those are always interesting, to say the least. Yeah.
Do a lot of people show up? I guess it depends.
It depends. But usually for these hillside cases, you have people that are pretty knowledgeable and understanding of the process, and are typically somewhat politically astute. So they, and these people have a lot of vested interest in their property values. And so, like the scenario I described before, I mean, if you decide you're wanting to put a house up, build a house above me, and now all of a sudden I can't see the ridge line, or I can't, all my views are gone, I'm probably going to have something to say about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So do other homeowners on a hillside, so we'll say on Camelback Mountain, for example, do they not sympathize with this person who's going through the same process that they went through however many years ago? And no, that's a hard no.
No sympathy on that. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
If anything, they would want to make sure that you're having to go through at least what they went through.
Ooh.
That's
A little selfish.
that's the negative part of the human nature that I typically run into and see when it comes to this type of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. All
Yeah.
right. That's, I mean, I guess that makes sense. People can be snarky like that.
Misery loves company at times, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So out of so far where we're at, like, where do you come into play? Where would be the time that somebody calls you?
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much in the beginning is better.
Okay.
And kind of help people along with through the process, and we can run through different scenarios. If this happens, then that, if this, then that. And so that way they kind of understand, all the different scenarios that could occur. And like I said, each site has its own story, its own situation. So there's no such thing as one size fits all at all when you're talking about hillside lots. Yeah, I mean, I always hope I get calls in the beginning. Unfortunately, most of the time when I get calls is when there's problems in every type of scenario, whether or not it's a hillside project or a high-rise or a mid-rise apartment building. So anyways.
You're the go-to when other people have messed up, when there's issues. It's like, oh, call Skyline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
probably a good way to put it.
So do you take, like, if as a homeowner, you can just go through this process by yourself, obviously very blind, you have no idea what you're doing. So you come in and you kind of like guide them, facilitate, do the negotiations for them.
Right. What I would do is I would essentially act as the project manager. And so I would kind of I would help the property owner to understand and make sure that the engineer and the architect and the surveyor, the development team is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that they're not, taking advantage, so to speak. So that's one thing. So in some scenarios, an architect may not, or an engineer may not like that. On the flip side is they realize that they don't have to deal with a lot of the negotiation and maneuvering through the city, which most of them don't like to do. They'll charge people for it, but it's not what they're good at, and it's not what they prefer doing. So, the bottom line is that the homeowner is going to know that I'm going to try and get them through and approved as fast as possible, and for the least amount of money. And like I said, we'll run through all the different scenarios, the different pros and cons. Because for example, you could have an idea that you wanted to do a certain design, but now all of a sudden that design requires an additional $30,000 in culverts or in engineering. That an easy tweak of the design, now all of a sudden you actually save money. So there's just so many different scenarios.
I know there are. So I think you just kind of touched on this, but I wanted to know who does a homeowner need to hire? Like, who are all of the counterparts to get them through this? In addition to you can throw yourself in there, because I think that you're a critical piece to all of this.
So you definitely need to have an engineer. The first thing that you definitely need is an engineer / surveyor, someone that does a survey. Oftentimes engineers have surveyors as part of their company. And so that's one of the first things you typically need to do if there isn't an approved plan on file. Then, and what the engineer, the surveyor will do, again, they will do a slope analysis. And so they will determine what is the slope of the property. And so, again, anything that is a 10% slope, which means that it rises more than 10 feet per 100 feet, that's considered a hillside lot. So once that's done, it provides kind of the foundation and the constitution for everything else moving forward. Because at that point, then you can determine, okay, here's how big the lot is, here's the slope. Now all of a sudden I have 20,000 square feet of total disturbance of the site, or 35% if we use a percentage. So that means your house, let's just use the 20,000 square feet. That means that your house, your driveway, your pool, everything on the lot cannot exceed 20,000 square feet or 35%, whichever is more stringent. Okay. So you have a number of masters that you have to adhere to, so to speak. And so once you get the slope analysis and the survey done, then it allows you to kind of maneuver and figure out. And hillside lots are different. I mean, you oftentimes, if you want to put the house higher up on the lot, depending on the slope, you may not be able to build. It's going to be a lot more expensive if you have to put more driveway up there and you have to create a flatter area. It means you're blasting into the mountain, you're creating a pad. Now all of a sudden, now you've got these other issues. If you're blasting into the mountain, okay, so what are you doing to protect boulders from falling down on your neighbor's property? So there's a lot of moving parts, And
I just want to say this does happen. These happen. I don't want to say every day. It's not a common occurrence, I don't believe. Like, you have to be extremely serious. You have to want to do this. You have to have, like we said, the finances, the contacts, the patience. You have to be able to endure a lot. I mean, this is not a quick project. This is a long haul.
100% agreed. Yep.
So
accurately stated. Yeah. So, so there's just a lot of different moving parts. Now, if you place the lot lower on the slope, where maybe you only have about a 5 to 8% or 5 to 10% slope, then you have a lot more flexibility because you have less scarring of the property. And so, but now it allows you to have a bigger house, and it allows you to consolidate more of your disturbed area in a smaller area. So, and you have different, so that's just one scenario. There's
right.
Lots of those scenarios that you could, depending, again, it all depends on the site.
Yes. You can't go down too many rabbit holes. We don't have enough time, nor would you be able to even cover it all, I'm sure.
That is true.
And then I think my last question for you is, how does living in an HOA community affect building hillside? Because we have a very well-known community here, Clearwater Hills.
Yep.
It's in Paradise Valley. It's a guard-gated community. And I've definitely looked at a lot of lots in there with clients. And it seems like a very scary task to take on. Task is probably not big enough of a word, but it's a massive project to do all this.
Yeah.
So how does an HOA influence the build of a hillside lot?
Yeah. So, Clearwater Hills has a very, very active HOA. And so I think I'm putting that lightly. The bottom line is, if you want to do something in Clearwater Hills in PV, well, the funny thing is so it's located in PV, but it's actually located in the Maricopa County Island. So
really,
when you get your approvals, you actually don't go to the town of Paradise Valley. You go to the Maricopa County. and you deal with Maricopa County. Because I have a project that is the highest lot in not only in Paradise Valley but in Clearwater Hills, and
Okay.
was a case of mine, one of my cases. But yeah, if you any type of anything, any hillside lot, anything that you want to do in that community, you've got to get their approval, and don't waste any time without getting going to the county and trying to submit plans and that type of. You're really going to cause yourself some major problems if you don't get the HOA on board. That is so the county essentially they don't get involved in civil matters. That is, HOAs are considered CCNRs. Those are considered civil matters, and they don't get involved in them. But those additional laws that the HOA, like for example Clearwater Hills, you do in order to not have to not go through a lawsuit. You want to pay attention to them, and you want to adhere to them, and you want to conform with them as much as possible. Now, just like in any case law, if the HOA is imposing stipulations or requirements on you that are above and beyond what have been imposed on other property owners, then you could have, and you decide you don't want to listen to them, then you may have a case. Because again, it's HOAs are required to treat everyone, within reason. It falls back under the 14th Amendment a little bit. You got to treat people. Everyone needs to be treated fairly, and in other words, my point is if there are your neighbors all have certain approvals to do, certain build in a certain manner, and all of a sudden the HOA says, well, I know we approve them for that, but we don't think you should be able to do anything close to that. And that falls into the arbitrary and capricious nature of HOAs and hearing officers that can happen at times. So, in other words, you don't have to always, but I think 98% of the time, you're going to need to. Most HOAs and CCNRs, as long as they're not 100 years old, are typically adhered to. So, I guess I can't stress that enough. But there are scenarios where you may have some leeway and flexibility.
Okay, so every HOA is different. The way they handle the process is a little bit different. Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know. I mean, I don't want somebody to be afraid of purchasing in an HOA, whether it's a hillside lot or if they want to scrape it. But, I don't want someone to be afraid to build in there, because it is one more layer to add to the process that you have to go through an HOA, have their blessing, rather than just going straight to Camelback Mountain and there's no HOA where you can kind of just start the process at your own free will.
Yeah. And you can look at it. I mean, if you take that, depending on the person, if they look at things positively, if they're a positive thinking person, then they could look at it and say, well, look, I like this area. I love this neighborhood. This is where I want to build my dream home. And, the HOA and their requirements are what make this place what it is. So it essentially requires each property owner to be sensitive and understanding and cognizant of their neighbors, so to speak. So you can look at it like that. Other people obviously are going to be like, oh, this is BS. I can't believe they're, getting in my business. So,
which they shouldn't be purchasing in an HOA to start with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You may need to be out at 159th Avenue and whatever.
Next part of town.
Yeah. So, it just depends.
That's funny. I mean, this has just been so helpful. I feel like I could probably ask 10,000 more questions because
Well,
it is just like this onion that we constantly need to be peeling back. And I don't think you could cover all of it if you tried, like I said. But
sure.
is there anything else that you want to leave us with? I just want to bring as much quality content to people because this is such an interesting subject, at least to me.
Yeah. I think we covered most of it, at least, generally. I think what's important is it's just for people to understand that, look, this is you're buying a unique lot, and those unique lots there are unique circumstances, and above and beyond buying just a square lot in the middle of the city. And so you just have to manage your expectations. And and most of the time, these homes or these lots that people are buying are their dream homes. So, you have to understand that certain, if you're going to buy your dream home, you got to be willing to hang in there and work through the labyrinth, I guess. So
I think that what you said is key, managing your expectations.
Yeah.
I think
For
that's
sure.
key.
That's
where
good.
someone like you comes in.
Well,
Hopefully.
Yeah. I think managing expectations is probably key to life.
Right. Not just hillside building, but to every situation.
Exactly. So.
Okay, the only thing we didn't touch on is cost, and I know that that's probably a wide range, totally depending on what's going on. Can you give us a ballpark of a wide range?
That's a tough one.
Okay.
There's just so many different scenarios. I mean, typically, a survey or a slope analysis probably costs you, depending on the complexity, I would think, under 10 grand, maybe 7 to 10 grand, something like that. And then, your city fees, the amount of money that it costs for the city to review your plans. I mean, you probably want to budget, 15 to 20 grand. But there's just a lot. There's just so many different scenarios. So
right. And it depends on what I get it. I feel like
I mean, the bottom line is one lot could literally have a flat, just a 10% slope, no issues. It has access. It has it's got access to city water, facilities. There's because the other thing that I didn't touch on is if you have a lot that is high up enough, and if there's not city water that is located adjacent to it, then you may have to build a water tank, or you may have to there's just anyway,
right, because utilities, you have to have utilities at the lot, and obviously there's a benefit to purchasing a lot that somebody's already run them there, which you and I have dealt with that, and that helps because it's one less thing you have to do. It's already been approved, so all you have to really focus on are the housing needs or the buildings and variances and all that. But I'm sure that trying to get utilities to a lot is not easy.
And then the other thing people have to remember when they're designing the site is that they can only you can't just have a driveway that goes straight up. You have to. It can't. The driveway can't be more than 20%. Grade. So, and what that means is that if you're really high up, it means that you've got to do switchbacks back and forth to where you're because ambulance or a fire truck has to be able to get up it. So that's just. I mean, again,
there's so many things that go into it.
So, but the good thing is you hire a good development team. there are a number of guys typically those of us that handle hillside, we handle a good amount of them, of those type cases. And so, we're able to kind of maneuver and work through a lot of this stuff, obviously. So,
well, especially with how long you've been around and doing this, I would think that most of this is a no-brainer. It's easy. I don't want to say it's on autopilot and you're just going through the motions, because I know that you're not by any means, but majority of this is it's not new to you. It's easy.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say easy, but what I would say is that, we've dealt with a number of those issues at some point in time, because, it still can be complex, for sure.
Right.
But yeah, you definitely do not want to hire an engineer that has no experience doing hillside, or a surveyor that has not done hillside. Okay. And preferably an architect that has done some hillside. So that's important. There are architects out there that literally only do production subdivisions, which are basically the same house, and they're great at that. But it's just there's a lot more. There's so many other factors involved.
Well, it's a niche market to work in hillside.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. But unless you have another specific, I could go down all different types of rabbit holes. Sure, you know that.
No, you don't have to go down all the rabbit holes. This is so interesting. Seriously, thank you for your time. I love hearing about
my
this.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
It makes me feel like there's a whole world out there that I don't know about, and I just want to absorb it because it's interesting, how do you become king of the mountain? How do those people become king of the mountain?
That's right. So anyway, well, I'm glad that you find it interesting. I find it interesting as well. But yeah, I love hillside projects. They're fun, and it really it makes you. It requires you to really know your stuff,
right?
I like that.
And you have to have passion. You have to be a problem solver.
Yeah.
I don't think you can be scared. Like, you have to be able to take this bull by the horns and go for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt.
Cool.
No doubt.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Again, this is Jason Allen with Skyline Consultants. He is the founder of this amazing company. And I am Lauren House with Beyond the House on the Social Nostra Network. And thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.